Routing is the concept of basically road mapping your route on a surf map. If surf is about getting from A to Z, then routing is essentially how are you going to get from A to Z. And routing covers a lot of things. Which ramps will you skip? Which shortcuts will you use? How will you leave the ramps? How are you going to approach the angle? How long are you going to surf the ramp? You can pretty much name any one of these things, and routing is involved to some degree in all of these circumstances. This is not restricted to world records. In fact, routing is more or less focused on actually completing maps and understanding maps at first. And this is why it's very tough for a lot of players to actually grasp what routing is, because routing inherently requires you to play a lot of different maps. Exposure to how you can approach things differently is essentially the core foundation of how you develop good routing. So how does one route? Well, routing is literally all dependent on what map you're playing, and it always changes. But there are some core fundamentals or some core things you can always take away from other maps and apply them to different ones. Even though you've never played a map and you're starting to learn a new map, with routing, you can essentially start approaching the map in a way you already understand, because you have already played other maps that have akin or similar gameplay. Routing also helps you spot ramps or potential gaps that you can use to your advantage to make your life easier for yourself. Say, for example, that I am just a random person that wants to complete Elysium Free and I am on the last stage. Instead of landing more at the front of this ramp right here, instead, what I can do to make my life more easier and make the game way easier for myself to play is landing at the back of this. Because if I land further at the back, I can get more speed and I can get an easier line into the next window, and also the board becomes way more manageable. Routing can also be about approaching a map a better way than the intended way to approach it. One of my favorite examples of this specifically is Surf Edge on this ramp right here. On this ramp, it is way worse to actually follow the entire ramp, follow this curve, and then go into the hole. Because with the amount of speed that you will generally have entering this area, the height of the ceiling, the amount of speed you have, and how long you need to airstray for before you hit the next ramp, clashes so much that essentially you're just almost guaranteed to fail. If you just flick earlier though, this entire issue is basically resolved right there on the spot. Paying attention to what you can do on the map and what the mapper gives you essentially of how long a ramp is, where it's positioned, how much height, or general speed you'll have going into an area can determine how you can route something. And it could be even as small as, I'm going to flick very slow throughout every single part of this map. For example, Gigapede. I will take as much time as I want between the gap where I strafe from this ramp to this ramp as much as I want. Because one, it is easier, gives me more speed, and just makes the entire playthrough of this section just way more consistent. And that's routing 101 essentially. It can be big or small differences. And in short, it's just a bunch of these small or big details compiled into one, and there you have a completion of a map or a world record run, and so on. So how do you get better at routing? Play different maps and pay attention to the map itself. Maybe super small things. How long is this ramp? Is the ceiling high enough for me to do a large flick? Will I get a better angle by approaching the ramp this way? Should I skip the ramp? Should I stay high? All of these questions contribute to routing, and the majority of the time it comes down to you playing the map yourself and feeling it out. Do you have a lot of trouble when it comes to boarding this ramp? Is there any way you can do it differently? Is there anything prior in the map that can give me a better setup for this section, and so on? It's about taking a step forward, but also being able to take the step back whenever you need to. Hopefully this was somewhat of a useful explanation to what routing is. I think right now with the current state of Surf, routing is pretty much a skill that is not really seen or really expressed a lot nowadays. We have a lot of maps that generally just kind of play the game for you. A lot of maps are very straightforward and don't necessarily leave too much room for interpretation between how you can basically approach the ramp differently or approach the map differently, all those sorts of things. But that was routing explained. Hopefully it was somewhat useful. Good luck to you on your next grind, and thank you for watching.